We begin in Europe, where the Princess of Wales, Kate Middleton, says she is in the early stages of treatment after cancer was found in tests. Now, in a video statement, she says it was a huge shock after an incredible tough couple of months. Now, but she sent a positive message saying that she is well and getting stronger every day. Details of the cancer has not been disclosed, but Kensington Palace says it is confident the princess will make a full recovery. The princess's statement explains that when she had abdominal surgery in January, it was not known that there was any cancer. She said she was thinking of all those who have been affected by cancer. The UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has launched the Conservative Party's campaign for local elections in England and Wales, set to take place on May 2nd, 2024. Polls for councillors in 107 local authorities across England will take place, as well as mayoral elections in London and 10 other cities, while 37 police and crime commissioners will also be voted for in England and Wales. Sunak told supporters that they have a chance to send a message to the opposition Labour Party and its leader, Sir Keir Starmer, accusing him of arrogantly taking the British people for granted.
Labour run something. They run it into the ground. In Birmingham, they've effectively bankrupted the largest local authority in Europe. They've saddled their constituents with a 21% council tax rise. That is not a typo, 21% council tax rise. We've got a great opportunity to elect fantastic Conservatives to deliver for their local communities in May. But we also have an opportunity to send a message to Keir Starmer, because he is arrogantly taking the British people for granted, assuming that he can just stroll into number 10 without saying what he would do. Because we all know he can't tell you what he would do differently.
The UN General Assembly on Thursday adopted a landmark resolution on the promotion of safe, secure and trustworthy artificial intelligence systems that will also benefit sustainable development for all. Adopting a United States-led draft resolution without a vote, the Assembly also highlighted the respect, protection and promotion of human rights in the design, development, deployment and the use of AI. The text was co-sponsored or backed by more than 120 other member states. The General Assembly also recognized AI systems' potential to accelerate and enable progress towards reaching the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It represents the first time the Assembly has adopted a resolution on regulating the emerging field. The U.S. National Security Advisor reportedly said earlier this month that the adoption would represent a historic step forward for the safe use of AI.
The General Assembly will now take a decision on the draft resolution A/78/L49 entitled Seizing the Opportunities of Safe, Secure and Trustworthy Artificial Intelligence Systems for Sustainable Development. May I take it that the Assembly decides to adopt the draft resolution A/78/L49.
Now, to further discuss this, I'm joined by Ogbonnaya Chioma, an artificial intelligence specialist. Hello, Chioma. Thank you so much for joining me at this time.
Thank you very much for having me. Good evening.
All right, Chioma. So talking about AI now, what would you say are the current best practices for ensuring AI systems are safe and secure, especially in their design to minimize the risk of malicious exploitation?
Well, right now, the best thing the government needs to put in policies to control the use of AI and the development of AI. Those policies need to be put in place when it comes to the... Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. Please go ahead. All right, we seem to be having connection issues with Chioma, but we'll try to reconnect with her in a bit. All right, moving away from that, still in Europe, the bishops of France have resolved to address the issue of sexual abuse as well as taking victims into account. Now, Bishop of Limoges, Pierre-Antoine Bozo, said the bishops made this resolution in Lourdes on Friday at the end of their spring plenary assembly.
Venu annoncer. Donc nous avons travaillé de manière dense pendant ces 3 jours et demi. Nous avons aussi abordé, pour la mener vraiment le plus loin possible, la question de la lutte contre les abus sexuels, de la prise en compte des personnes abusées, des personnes victimes. Et nous voulons vraiment rester très déterminés dans tout ce domaine. Nous avons évoqué la question aussi des personnes victimes à l'âge adulte, que nous n'avions pas encore prises en compte pour elles-mêmes. Donc les chantiers sont vastes, mais les évêques sont, je pense, vraiment déterminés. Et puis dans une grande...
Russia's FSB security service has arrested 7 Moscow residents linked to a pro-Ukraine militia accused of raiding Russia's border regions. The coordinated arrests come a few days after President Vladimir Putin ordered the FSB to wage an unrelenting crackdown on the fighters who he called scum traitors. Video published by state news agencies showed FSB officers bursting into an apartment and detaining one of the suspects, as well as a photo allegedly showing a cache of seized weapons. The militias, which say they're made up of Russian citizens who oppose Moscow's offensive, claim to have been behind a string of brazen incursions into Russian territory. EU leaders have agreed to open talks with Bosnia on joining the bloc, though negotiations will only begin in earnest once the Balkan country has passed more key reforms. Bosnia has been an official candidate for membership since 2022, but needed to implement a string of reforms before getting the green light on progressing to the next stage. Brussels last week said the country had completed some of the steps required, but outstanding judicial and electoral reforms remain. Russia's war on Ukraine has reinvigorated the EU's drive to enlarge in Eastern and Central Europe, with its current member states agreeing in December to start talks on joining with Ukraine and Moldova.
Nous avons pris la décision d'ouvrir les négociations avec la Bosnie-Herzégovine. C'est une étape clé, importante.
A hard-right Republican lawmaker has launched a bid to oust U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson, reigniting an intra-party battle between traditional conservatives and firebrand supporters of ex-President Donald Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a representative from Georgia, told reporters she had filed the motion to vacate over a government funding deal Johnson endorsed that she described as a betrayal of the American people. China says it sees major differences between Russia and Ukraine on the idea of a negotiated settlement to end the war, Beijing's Eurasia envoy Li Hui said Friday after wrapping up a tour. Beijing has sought to position itself as a mediator in the Ukraine conflict, calling for a political settlement and holding several rounds of talks. But while China says it is neutral in the conflict, it has been criticized for refusing to condemn strategic partner Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. Briefing media and diplomats in Beijing after his trip to Russia, Ukraine and EU states, Envoy Li said he saw a significant gap between Kyiv and Moscow on the subject of peace talks.
均坚持自己的立场，对和谈问题的认识差距较大，各方都期待中方发挥更大建设性作用，但是都认同最终要通过谈判而不是枪炮来结束这场战争。俄方赞赏中方为政治解决危机开展第二轮选择外交，认为危机。
Let's now bring you updates on the war in Gaza, where Britain and Australia have declared the need for an immediate cessation of fighting in Gaza as diplomatic pressure built on Israel to ditch a planned ground assault on the southern city of Rafah. After a meeting of Australian and UK foreign and defence ministers in Adelaide, the Allies issued a statement that stressed the urgency of an immediate cessation of fighting in Gaza to allow aid to follow or flow and hostages to be released. The call came just hours before the United States was expected to put a resolution to the UN Security Council stressing the need for an immediate ceasefire.
Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are starving. I echo David's comments about the importance of increased humanitarian aid, the need for that for Israel to allow that aid to enter, the importance of fighting to cease to enable that aid.
Russia and China on Friday vetoed a US-led draft resolution at the Security Council on a ceasefire in Gaza, joining Arab countries in saying it did not pressure Israel as Moscow accused Washington of a hypocritical spectacle. The United States, Israel's main ally, which has vetoed previous ceasefire calls, put forward the resolution in which the Security Council would have supported the imperative of an immediate and sustained ceasefire and for the first time condemned the October 7th attack by Hamas.
Which got very strong support, but then was cynically vetoed by Russia and China. I think we were trying to show the international community's sense of urgency about getting a ceasefire tied to the release of hostages, something that everyone, including the countries that vetoed the resolution, should have been able to get behind. The resolution, of course, also condemned Hamas. It's unimaginable why.
In the same vein, French President Emmanuel Macron has promised to keep pressing for a Gaza ceasefire at the UN Security Council, moments after China and Russia vetoed a US-backed draft resolution. Macron said the Security Council must call for an immediate ceasefire and humanitarian access, promising to resume work on an alternative French resolution along with US, European and Arab partners.
Sous l'autorité du Premier ministre, les premiers choix ont été faits pour justement réduire les dépenses côté État. Il faudra qualifier la magnitude de l'ajustement qu'il faut faire et il faudra ensuite le compléter dans toutes les actions utiles de la dépense publique pour qu'on puisse faire face à ce choc conjoncturel. Et j'en appelle au monde agricole français. Est-ce que le CETA est bon ou mauvais pour notre agriculture ? Regardez les chiffres, le rapport est extrêmement clair. Il est très bon pour le lait, il est très bon pour le fromage, il est très bon pour le vin, il est très bon sur toutes les catégories clés. Et là où il y avait des risques, parce qu'on a mis les clauses miroirs, il y avait une crainte sur le bœuf, elles ont été inhibées. Donc c'est un très bon accord. Sur Gaza, je salue ici le message clair et uni du Conseil européen sur l'urgence qui est la nôtre, avec l'appel à un cessez-le-feu immédiat et durable et un accès humanitaire suffisant face au risque imminent de famine à Gaza, qui est injustifiable. La libération inconditionnelle de tous les otages, et notamment de nos 3 compatriotes. Je le redis ici, la France n'abandonne pas ses enfants, et nous sommes avec eux et avec leurs familles. Nous avons collectivement exhorté les autorités israéliennes à ne pas entreprendre d'opérations terrestres à Rafah, ce qui ne ferait qu'aggraver une situation humanitaire déjà catastrophique, alors que plus d'1 million de Palestiniens sont déplacés à Rafah.
To further discuss this, I'm joined by Bolu-Michael, Biyi, a foreign policy analyst. Hello, Bolu. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
All right. Now, given the recurrent nature of conflicts in Gaza, Bolu, what novel approaches or structural changes could be implemented to break the cycle of violence and also achieve a lasting ceasefire agreement?
Some effort has been made, so far. However, it's not every strategy that's been employed that has worked so far. In terms of peacekeeping strategies, I don't think anything novel might be employed. But one thing that could be done that's not frequently used is probably having special international peacekeeping forces to ensure that the ceasefire agreements are being adhered to, and that there's no violation whatsoever. And it's important for the Security Council to look at the current frameworks and ensure that it is addressing the core concerns and the grievances of both parties, which includes issues as it pertains to security, land rights, access to resources, and other important variables.
All right, but then how do the competing interests and strategic calculations of the major regional and international actors involved in Gaza impact the prospects of successful ceasefire negotiations?
Well, it's what we are seeing right now. These countries are powerful countries that have their own vested interests, and they won't do anything that does not advance their own interests in any way, whether you look at Russia, whether you look at China or United States, Britain, France. There are powerful countries in the Security Council. And the effect when it comes to moving forward in the peace process is what we are seeing right now. We're having deadlocks and vetoes that hinders progress and counter vetoes. So that's what happens. Deadlock just slows down the peacemaking process, and it's quite unfortunate because when two elephants are fighting, is the grass that suffers. The longer they take, the more they have these vetoes and counter vetoes and deadlocks, the more people are dying in Gaza, the more the issues that is killing the people persist. And it's very unfortunate that these countries might be playing politics with people's lives.
All right, now we've seen so many ceasefires in the past, especially from Israel's ally, US. Now, can you tell us what you think might have hindered previous ceasefire agreements in Gaza and what new strategies might be necessary to overcome these obstacles?
Well, we've seen situations whereby there'll be ceasefires, agreements, and they get violated, and it's usually surrounds the terms of these ceasefires, the scope, sometimes the scope for which the international community can get involved, or even the enforcement mechanisms put in place. But in terms of solution, it's for them to get into confidence building mechanisms or processes, which might be difficult to do because these are countries that have fundamental trust issues between each other. Another thing they might do is to have the third party mediation, which I think is ongoing. Maybe they can intensify that effort.
Okay, now, Bolu, you talked about, some of these countries having trust issues between each other, and you actually did talk about, some of these ceasefire agreements being violated. Now, to what extent do you believe that the current ceasefire negotiations in Gaza are driven by genuine efforts towards conflict resolution versus short-term political calculations and optics?
We can't really say the intentions of both parties, but one thing is clear, that they have vested interest and they would only pursue their own interests. But what I don't understand, and this is my own personal opinion, is the role of the US in this war. It doesn't look genuine to me. It's as though they're playing politics. Their interest, this was USA was a country that vetoed the previous call for a ceasefire. They blocked it. And now they're calling for a ceasefire that they previously blocked. It just doesn't make any, I can't fathom it, because this is calling for a ceasefire for a war that you continue to fund. So if the US is really genuine about this war, they should make a decisive move, maybe withdrawing their military forces or intelligence, or stop funding the war. Just do something big that shows that they are serious about, having, a ceasefire. Maybe to have score political points back home, being that the president on seat right now is having an election coming, as popularity has gone down. So there's a motive. I believe strongly that the US has a motive behind this sudden and really, awkward call for a ceasefire all of a sudden.
Now, talking about motives, let's look beyond the immediate ceasefire agreements now. What comprehensive measures could be pursued to address the root causes of the conflict in Gaza and also to be able to foster sustainable peace and stability in the region?
Okay, we need to know if countries understand, or warring parties know where they're coming from, they'll be able to chart a course to where they're going to. So it's important that these two warring parties, they recognize their historical differences, the war that has spanned through several generations. So it's important for them to first of all recognize their historical differences, and even the Palestinian forces or faction, the Palestinian wing, they have their own factions. So they need to unite themselves, because even if we call for a ceasefire or there's a sustainable peace process right now, the Palestinian forces will still be fighting against each other. We'll still be finding an issue whereby the UN Security Council is meeting to solve Palestinian internal problems. So we're having a crisis within a crisis. So it's important for Palestine themselves to have their acts together, and also important to address the core concerns, like I said earlier, like issues like land use, access to resources, security concerns, and they must begin to invest in rebuilding the economy and the infrastructure of Gaza, invest in education, restore the healthcare, go back to agriculture, and have security apparatus in place. We start to rebuild the process like the Marshall Plan that we developed Europe.
All right, well, thank you so much, Bolu-Michael Biyi, for joining me and speaking on this.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
And that's all on Beyond the Continent. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do follow us on social media as well. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Dashen, Usman.